Welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to the most interesting people in the world of pop culture. And this week on the show, we are joined by Buzz Osborne of the Melvins. So happy you can be joining us again. I'm Jason Rockman, the host of the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to awesome people in all walks of pop culture life. And I just want to let you know, if you are enjoying this podcast, please like, subscribe, let your friends know about it. And we will get this out to you every goddamn week if you keep turning up. And that's what's been happening a little over 2 years now. So we appreciate you. I want to bring in my co-host, Ryan Stick. Ryan, what's up?
This episode's really long, so I'm going to keep it brief by saying what's up. What's up is this episode's amazing. Yes, I learned a lot, not just about myself, but about my no, I'm totally kidding. No, this episode's really cool, and we have a little after buzz.
Yeah, we have a bonus. We got a little after buzz bonus for you. So let's give you a little hint. It is the 25th anniversary of Ipecac Records. So we're going to be joined by somebody right after Buzz that is very, very important to Ipecac Records. And I don't want to tell you who it is. There will be a bonus guest at the end of this and you will find out, unless we put it in the thumbnail. But no, we're just going to say bonus guest, aren't we? Yes.
Are we? Okay. Sure.
We are.
We're figuring this out right now. Yeah.
We're figuring this out. So if you've been watching this and you're wondering who's the bonus guest, yes, we've been advertising that. There's a bonus guest at the end of this and you're going to be really liking it. So without any further ado, before we, steamroll right into this incredible conversation with Buzz, I want to thank our friends over at Heartbeat Hot Sauce, the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. Ryan, it's that time of year where kids are thinking about going to camp, and I thought bringing out the old camp sauce, which was one they launched last year that became a big hit, would be appropriate. So here's the Heartbeat Hot Sauce Camp Sauce for you to check out. It is a wonderful hot sauce that falls in the mild to just about medium level on the old hot meter in the back. So check them out at heartbeathotsauce.com and use our promo code Rockman20 and you'll get 20% off your entire order. Thanks, of course, to our friends at Studio House Designs that make us look fresh. Right, Ryan? We always looking fresh in our Studio House Designs.
So fresh.
And our friends at Audio Technica Canada for all of this great gear. We couldn't do this without Mike and the gang at Audio Technica. So thank you. Now, Ryan, legendary artist. Some of the stuff we cover in this conversation is out of this world. What I love about Buzz is that doesn't pull punches, no holds barred, and I think he wrote the book on not giving a fuck. He really did. His camera angle would suggest that. Yes. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, Buzz Osborne of the Melvins. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for talking to me at, it's 4:00 for you. It's 7:00 for me. So I guess it's like kind of end of the afternoon for you.
Or maybe it's the beginning of my day. No, I got a very, you have an interesting room there.
Yeah, I got a lot of crap here. I got that right there with that finger. You know that guy because you told me I told him yes. I had an interview with you and he said, yeah, he just texted me, Bill from Mastodon.
I can't see what it is.
Oh, it's a Crack the Sky album cover.
Ah,
yeah. So
I can't tell. I can tell. I can tell it's rectangle. It's a square shape. We're beyond that again.
Yeah, it's the crack.
What's on the shelf? What kind of stuff do you collect?
I'm actually friends with Ron English, so I'm really into a lot of Ron stuff.
That's some Ron English stuff.
Do you? What do you got?
Oh, just a wide variety of his things. You know.
Are you so you're into you're into vinyl toys?
Yeah, one of the things I really like. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I got Ron has a band called the Rabbits, where and what he basically does, he writes lyrics and he puts musicians together. And we got to know each other. I used to work in radio and he came into Montreal. He was doing Mural Fest. and he was doing a big mural in Montreal, and came into the studio, and he was like, "Hey, would you like to, maybe sing on some of my stuff?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah. So I'm one of the rabbits with three B's, and it's a lot of fun. I love Ron. He's a really, really nice guy.
Are you in Montreal?
I am. Are you guys coming through Montreal on this tour?
No, not on my acoustic tour.
Okay.
I'm not. I can't quite say.
Okay.
One way or another.
Okay. But it is probably on the horizon at one point, right?
Maybe.
Cool. Well, we're here to talk about the new record, Tarantula Heart. It's coming out April 19th. And from what I'm reading and what I've heard so far, this is a very, very different record for you guys.
Yeah, the funny thing is we did it in a really weird way, but I don't know that had I not told people how we did it, that anyone would know. They would notice. And already I've said in some interviews, I've talked about how I did it. And then I've read like people in the comments saying stuff like, well, that's what it sounds like they did. It's like, motherfucker, you never would have even noticed that.
Well, I listened to it, and it does sound a little different. It does sound like and then again, this could be influenced by me reading the bio before on the record. So it's hard. Like I would love to have heard it without reading the one sheet, because the one sheet kind of gives away what was done. And then is it influencing my listening? You know what I mean?
It is. There's no doubt about it. It's a subtle weirdness that never could have happened if we'd done it in a traditional way. That's the thing that I found. And I didn't know it right away. It wasn't until because what we did, we recorded all the drums and we jammed, and I had basic riffs along with it, and then I took we would have I don't know, it was somewhere between 8 and 12, 15 to 20 minute jams, sort of jams, but jamming sounds like we're changing things up, and but the drums, once the drums were locked into a tight thing, we would just keep going, and they would kind of expand on that, and they did a lot of stuff off of that kind of thing, but it was riff oriented around a riff that maybe some semblance of a riff that I would have, and then they would come up with a drum part over it, and we had toured with Ministry about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so every single night after a few shows, Roy, the drummer from Ministry, would come out and play 2 songs with us. He was a big fan of ours, and we had met Roy on Ozfest in '98, which is a whole nother story. But so we knew Roy, and I'd kind of hooked up with him a little bit before we did the tour, and then he would play with us every night. And so I'd go, "Oh, you should come over and play some drums. That'd be great. We should do some kind of recording." And so he brought over a giant ARP synthesizer, like a traditional one, and he's really super into that stuff, and he's very good at it. And he brought his drums, and I go, "Well, bring whatever you want, because it doesn't have to be traditional, because we already have a drummer playing a normal drum set." So and he brought a bunch of weird stuff and set up his drums, and then we recorded a bunch of things, and then we recorded him with doing a bunch of synth stuff, a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And then we did the same thing the next day. Right. So we had, by the time we were done, it was 2 days in the studio, and essentially the drummers were done. That was it. Okay. Right. Then we recorded a bunch of his synthesizer by himself, just recording a bunch of crazy shit. And then I sat with those recordings for hours and hours and hours, and just listened to them and trying to find spots where I was like, "Oh, look, here's a section where it all locks up really nicely." What I did not want to do is chop drums. Sit there and chop drum beats, oh, make it work. I'll move this, move that. And I don't do any of that. I just found sections like 4 minutes, 6 minutes, or whatever, where it worked.
Right.
And then I rewrote guitar parts and things like that to those drum beats.
Right.
So it's on most of the songs, it's not what was originally, the riff is not what was that ended up recorded, was not what was they were originally playing with.
Sure. So I mean, when you think about it, I think when people, now that you explain the way you did it, it makes sense to me, being someone who's made music before. It makes perfect sense that you would try something like that, because it's different, but it's not because everybody, I mean, if you write music, there's so many possibilities, right? Like,
Yeah.
So if your guitar riff influences drums, and then
Right.
of course the drums will influence a different guitar riff. Like, it makes perfect sense. But what made you want to do that? Like, were you just like, at this point, it's like 30 records plus in, let's just do something different?
Well, I think the first song I did it with was Allergic to Food.
Yep.
And what I found was, and like, there's no click track on this. There's nothing like that. There's no, let's just do it in time, then we can cut it however we want to. Now it's up and down, tempo wise, all over the place, which doesn't bother me,
No.
But I had to figure out the pattern that the drummers were playing in. And it's not repeating. It repeats to some degree, but sometimes it goes 3 times, sometimes it goes 2 times, sometimes they only do it once. And so then I figured out, okay, I can put a vocal here, I can put a vocal here, there's a little guitar solo spot here. I just had to plan it all out around what was there, as opposed to going, let's cut this into a verse, let's cut this into a chorus. There's none of that, know. And so when I played it back for them, before the bass was put on it, I had guitar and vocals and a whole bunch of overdubs and all kinds of things like that. They were like, what the hell is this? Like I played it for Roy. He's like, how did you get this out of that? Because it's a fairly complicated part.
Right.
And I figured out a riff that would work, and I did that once I did that, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of cool, because I'm getting them to do it. They're playing in a way they never would have.
Right.
If they're jamming along. So the accents are in weird spots, and they never would have played like that. Never, ever, 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 Right. And so in some subtle way, I got something new, and certainly a drum patterns that are not what would, like, if we took that then and then practiced it,
right,
then recorded, it would be different. Now it doesn't mean it would be bad, but it would be different. Now, when we go to play these songs live, we have to learn them like we're learning cover songs.
Right.
We've never rehearsed. We've never played this stuff.
Right.
We've never rehearsed this once. These are brand new things. And so the first song on the record is the song Pain Equals Funny. And that's 3 different things that I worked with and then put together. But, I mean, to get something like that all together in one thing would probably be pretty hard. But that's probably my favorite thing on the record.
Right. It's like 19 minutes and 8 seconds, I think.
Yeah. I really, really like how that all lays out. Really great. I really think that one came out really good. And then I like Working the Ditch and Allergic to Food. I mean, the record came out really good. I really, really like it. But I've written and recorded probably close to 500 songs and done 30 albums, depending on what people count as an album. And so the idea of doing something different really appeals to me. I've done every kind of traditional type of recording you can possibly imagine in every type of way that there is. And so I just don't, the idea of doing all that over again, I'm sure, I don't know that I would ever do another record like this, because now if I go into, then they're going to think that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
This was totally different than that. Like Steven, the bass player, Stephen McDonald, he was like, I don't remember doing this at all. He goes, when did we do this? It sounds so different. Because then he had to come in and replay a bunch of the bass parts because they're not right.
Right. Yeah.
Because the way we originally did it was I had a riff, and then me and Steven would be in the control room area. It's at our own studio with Toshi Kasai in LA. Yeah. And me and him would be and then so we get total isolation with the drums. We had I think the bass at that point was doing, I can't remember how we did it. We were using isolated amps and isolated bass and guitar, and then the drummers were hearing that through their headphones, and so we didn't have any bleed. The drums were bleeding into each other, but we didn't have any bleed from the guitars or bass. So we could easily add whatever we wanted to it because there was total isolation. So when Steven came back in here, and he had to relearn bass parts along with the stuff that was there. And then when the whole thing was done, or nearly done, then I had my buddy Gary Chester from We Are the Asteroid I had a whole bunch of parts that I had intentionally left where me and him could do a lot of back and forth soloing. And he's such a cool guitar player. And I've known him since he was in this band called Ed Hall. They were on Boner Records the same time we were in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
And I admired his playing. I thought he was a very, very good player that had kind of went, not necessarily unnoticed, but unheralded. You know, he's far better than anyone would imagine. And I noticed his talent, you know, because I knew that he was outside the box from the very beginning, just in the way that he played and his sensibilities with a guitar in his hand. And I really had wanted him to do something with us for a long time. And so he came out for a couple of days and about a little over a year ago, and we did a bunch of recording. I go, well, let's try this. Try it on this. Let's play. I left this whole section here where we can do a bunch of guitar stuff. And so it was all adding, not writing, you know.
Right.
Which was a lot of fun. I would love to do that again, you know. I mean, Gary is such a good guitar player. He would be, if we were going to have a second guitar player, he would be one of the guys that would be in my top 2 or 3, you know.
Yeah. And that would, and I mean, and it's cool to see you guys, you know, you're mentioning Roy, and you know, I've known Roy for a long time. I remember him from like 99. You were talking about the 98 Ozfest. I was on Ozfest in 2000, and Roy almost was on Ozfest. He was almost Ozzy's drummer for Ozfest 2000. And I had been, you know, I admired his work from Soulfly, of course, from that first Soulfly record, which he's just a beast of a drummer. And I just recently saw him again on the Filter when they were out with Filter and Ministry. And Roy's one of these guys that he's not only is an incredible drummer, but he's just got this great, almost like childlike enthusiasm for music, you know, and I could see him jumping into something like this and going, hell yeah, man, I'm going to do this with the Melvins. I want to fucking do this.
Well, it was directionless. I mean, we were just, you know, he's like, you trusted us.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, for you guys to do it. I mean, you know, you find people that are good and you let them do their job, to me.
So well said. Yeah. I agree.
The musicians that I've played with in the Melvins are almost always of the highest caliber, as far as I'm concerned. They're just godlike musicians, and I have had the fortune to be able to play with them. You know, which one of my favorite bands is The Who, and I always imagine Pete Townsend had, you know, writing songs for John Entwistle and Keith Moon to play.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better than that.
No. Yeah. And then there's that, but there's that, you know, there's that lousy singer that's got to sing over them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like, oh my God, you know, so, I mean, in a lot of ways I feel like that. It's like, I'm writing songs, and then I take these little babies that I have and I turn them over and watch them turn into something much, not totally different, but in a way that I wouldn't have thought of.
Right.
That's really fun for me. I know a lot of songwriters get really precious with that kind of thing, and like they know what to do. It's like, no, you don't. You know, there's always something you haven't thought of. And we're accidentalists along those lines too. So you could call this whole album, in a lot of ways, it's an accidentalist album. It's like, you know, this fell into my lap, and all I had to do is spend hours and hours and hours and hours with it, and there it was, just out of thin air, you know, in a way that's never happened before. And I think it's really, you know, I didn't know what Ipecac would think, and I turned it into them, and they're like, this is one of the, before they ever knew how we did it.
Yeah.
I just record. And they're like, this is one of the best records, one of our favorite records you've done. I was like, really? Because I really didn't know what people would think.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing it warts and all, and I'm far too close to it to have an unbiased opinion on it, you know, that's usually how it works. You know, I mean, it's like I hear it in a different way than a listener would. And so by the time now that this record comes out this month, I will have been living with it for about 2 years, a little less than 2 years.
Okay.
And so I'm done with it.
Yeah.
You know,
I've moved
on. And it's like, now it goes out into the general public and it's something new, but it's not new to me, you know? And so I can usually listen to records that we've made up until about the time they come out, and then I'm done with it.
Right.
Houston's director, and he always said, he goes, I would direct the movie, I would then sit with the editor, we'd edit it as close as we could, I'd watch it in the editing room, and as soon as I thought it was right, I would walk away from it.
Yeah. I think you have to, because
Yeah.
especially in filmmaking. I mean, there's so much time that is spent over and over again. It's one of the most common things when you do talk to directors, and I've talked to a few of them where they've said, like, especially after doing like a press tour for a big, a guy like Denis Villeneuve probably saw the last two Dune movies so many times that, he's going to go and he's going to intro a movie at a screening. There's no way he's sitting in the audience to watch that movie. He's going to dinner.
Yeah, he's done.
He's done. You talked about Ipecac, and they're coming up on the 25th anniversary of that label, and you're part of I believe it was the first release, that the Phantomas album. How does that feel to be such an integral part of a label that started off as, in my opinion, a place where, artists needed to have their voices heard, but it had to be run by artists. And it always felt that way. It felt like it was run by people that really cared about music. And here you are 25 years later.
Well, what's really funny about that was we did the Ozfest tour, and we had done with a new bass. We had a new bass player, Kevin Romanis. We had done the Honky record the year before that. We had been dumped from Atlantic the year before that. Mm-hmm. So then we put out the Honky record and toured for about 18 months roughly. And then we were on to thinking about what we were going to do. And at the same time, Mike Patton had asked me to join Phantomas. And so had rehearsed and played a couple shows, and then we're talking about doing an album, and we recorded the album. And then Greg, who was the guy who runs Ipecac, he was like, just start looking around for a label. And I was like, and we were looking for a label too. And he was not having much luck. He went to a couple labels who were just like, nah, I don't think so. And then there's one prominent metal label who were like, no, we'd have to hear demos with the whole band, what that would sound like. And it's like, demos, you got me, you got Dave Lombardo, you have Mike Patton and Trevor Dunn, and you want to hear demos, and then we're like, well, we just kind of feel, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, we just kind of feel that these are all people that are at the end of their careers.
Jesus.
And we just don't think that it's anything that we would want to do. It's like, we kind of do stuff that's newer, and Greg just tells me this. I'm just like, what the fuck? And I was like, he's like, I'm just thinking about putting this goddamn thing out myself. And I go, well, look, if you start a record label, we'll do a record with you guys for sure. Okay. So then he goes, I've got Phantomas, the new Mike Patton project, and I've got Melvins. And so he got a distribution manufacturing deal in an instant. Right. Now a year goes by. We put out 3 albums in 1 year with Ipecac. They all do good. And Phantomas does really good.
Yeah.
And the guy from that label said, that was the single stupidest decision I have ever made. And here we are 25 years later, we're talking about our new album. I've done umpteen albums with Ipecac. We did 4 Phantomas records. Yeah. Patton's done an album. It's like, you know what, buddy? Fuck you. Fuck you and your ageist bullshit. I was too old 25 years ago, apparently,
Yeah. I love it.
If I had listened to people like that, I've heard that shit my entire career.
Yeah.
You should do that. And I don't do real well with constructive criticism. I do not. I think, I have thought about this a lot more than you have. And I'm not in a creative endeavor with you. And you might think that you know everything. But in actuality, you don't know anything. Just let me do the driving. I know what to do.
Well, and I think what's great about the way the kind of the way the world has formed, or the way that the trajectory of the way the world's going, at least over the last 20 years, 15 more, but it really is artist friendly now. I mean, if you are, what Greg did 25 years ago is not unheard of now. It's actually the preferred business model if you want to hang on to everything, and it's what you can do so much easier now. I mean, you can have full control. People can make records anywhere. They can make them on their phones. And they don't have to hear anybody's bullshit anymore. They can just do it. Now, of course, marketing it is one thing and getting it out there is another thing, and cutting through the noise, but it's just nice to see artists have the power, if they choose to actually put the work in and use it. It's never been a more, it's never been more heavy artist sided than now.
Well, not a lot has changed for the bands. I mean, before, when record labels are selling tons of records, the bands didn't get paid, and now the bands still don't get paid.
Don't get paid. Yeah, I know. I mean, what ends up happening is you become glorified t-shirt salesman, unfortunately.
I mean, you still have to go out and, we still have to hustle. I've made my living in the kitchen solely since about 1988.
Right.
So it was well before the grunge explosion or any of that stuff. We were already doing okay, solely because the guy, Tom Flynn at Boner, was paying us what we were owed every 6 months.
Right.
And so does Greg. And so that's why those guys, I've never taken the records to someone else and taken the records away from Boner. I could, but I don't. I'm very loyal. If you treat me right, I'll be your friend forever.
Right. Right. And that's, there are a lot of people out there that still do good business. And that's what I'm saying. It's nice to see that the artists have I guess, more, they don't have to be beholden to a label anymore to get stuff done. Back, before, you would have to, you would need the money to start up to record. And nowadays you don't need that anymore. Most artists have their own recording spaces, especially the ones that are serious. They've invested back into being able to make music.
Yeah. I mean, most of them. I mean, there's some people that had their own studios then too, but it was just, I don't know. I mean, we were on Atlantic. We didn't get tons of money from them, but we got way more than we'd ever had.
Right.
But it was still the amount of money that we spent on all 3 of our Atlantic records probably wouldn't have paid for the lunch budget for a Guns N' Roses album,
Yeah.
And that would be for like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I mean, when you go into studios we would always ask, back in the 90s, when you'd actually go to a recording studio, when they still existed, ask stories, and they would be like, oh my God, talk about people like Springsteen. We'd ask them stories about how much money they would spend on like dinner for one shit like that. Bring me one of everything from wherever. And it's just like, well, to do that, that's like $8,000. Yeah, I know. Bring it. Okay. I'm just Mr. Working Class Hero, Yeah. That's how it is. Well, people just don't have any idea how eccentric and weird and wasteful who a lot of their heroes really are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've the little amount of time that I spent around a lot of that, living in LA for a while and recording at A&M and doing all that stuff. I saw some of the excesses and the stupidness.
Oh yeah.
I've always wanted to ask you this. I know you're a Kiss fan, or I assume you're a Kiss fan. What was the motivation to do those solo records?
Well, we thought it would be funny.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
Are you still a hardcore Kiss fan?
I never would have liked them if they didn't have good songs. You take a record like Alive, that's probably right up there with one of the greatest live albums, or however live it really is.
Yeah.
But one of the greatest live albums ever, probably. Right. I mean, Eddie Kramer is working on it. I mean, it's pretty fucking amazing. And when I go back and listen to that stuff now, I mean, if I wouldn't have liked them at the time, even if they hadn't, it wouldn't have mattered what they looked like. They didn't have good songs.
Yeah.
I liked good songs even when I was 12.
Right.
Songs like Strange Ways and, Detroit Rock City, those are good songs. People can say what they will about Kiss. But I've only had a good experience with those guys on a personal level. Gene and Paul have only been completely nice to me ever. Anytime I was ever around them, I don't have a single bad word to say about them. And to me, they are traditional, real rock stars.
Yeah.
The real sense of the word. And they can be nice to you. They can be nice. If they can do it, anybody can do it, which makes me hate these lower level fuckheads who think that they have to treat people badly. It makes me hate them even more.
I agree.
Like, those guys don't have to be mean. You certainly don't have to fucking be mean.
Yeah.
Just nice,
And it's true because, on 2 things, like Kiss writing good songs. You go back and you listen to especially some of that early stuff.
Oh my God.
Like just a song like Got to Choose. Like I just love the structures of the songs. They're poppy, they're catchy, and they're great rock songs. And there's not a doubt in my mind that obviously they influenced so many people, but not the Kiss shtick you think of from the songs, because they wrote great songs. And Gene was a damn good bass player and tasty bass lines too.
Gene is a severely underrated bass player, and I think he is one of the best rock singers that there's ever been.
Yep. Solid and still solid.
Rated, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, their first 6 albums, really, there's good stuff on all those records.
Mhm.
And that is amazing batting average, especially when you consider they probably put those out in about a 5-year period.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, plus 2 live albums, and you know, it's just they can do whatever they want. I don't care. You know,
Yeah.
they were good. They were really good, and super nice guys. And you know, take a record like Destroyer. It was recorded by Bob Ezrin and
Yep.
all that. It sounds like an Alice Cooper record. You know, it's the same kind of thing, and it's a fun little journey. And I love Alice Cooper. I mean, Alice Cooper is one of my favorite bands ever, and I know those guys must have loved that stuff too.
Yeah.
They had the theatrics, all of it, and you know, I mean, Alice Cooper is one of my heroes. So
he's pretty incredible, man. I mean, I saw him the last time I saw Cooper play was on that Ministry. Field, and he was great, and he was right before Rob. You know, he was right before Rob Zombie, and it was great to see. You know, Zombie comes on right after him, and you see the influence. Like it was almost like, you know, it was almost like watching the original movie and then the remake that really tips its hat to the original. Watching Zombie, you know.
Except the songs aren't anywhere near as good.
You said it, I didn't, but I agree with you.
I wouldn't fucking play after Alice Cooper.
Fuck.
No
way.
No way. No, that's crazy. I mean, you gotta have shit for brains to think you can go on after that. You're gonna go on after 18. I mean, Jesus, you can play a whole entire set of hits. Classic.
Yeah, no, they're great.
Classic hits. It's just like, oh my God. I mean, no. I mean, it's like one time we were playing this festival in Europe called the All Tomorrow's Parties.
Okay.
And they were like, okay, you guys are gonna go on right after the Stooges. I was like, no, we're not. Yeah, you are. You have to go on after the Stooges. I go, no, I'd rather cancel the show. What do you mean? You have to do it. I go, I don't have to do anything. And I am not playing after the fucking Stooges. You can forget it. I'm not that stupid, you know? So they let us play right before the Stooges. Or I would not have done it. No way would I. Something went on after them, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, sorry for you guys. You know, I mean, Jesus Christ. It's a fucking Stooges. I'm not asking for that. I saw Phantom House played a giant festival down in South America with the Stooges and 9 Inch Nails. And 9 Inch Nails were like, well, we're headlining. We're the ones that have sold all the records. And Iggy was like, yeah, but you know, I think it should be, you know, they wouldn't do it. Nope. 9 Inch Nails was like, nope. And so Stooges went on right before 9 Inch Nails. And I have never seen an opening band kick the living shit out of the headlining band worse than that. I've never seen an opening band stomp a headlining band worse than that ever. And I'm standing off the side of the stage, and Iggy was just like going with he had a chip on his shoulder, and it was like pulling out everything. And I'm standing there next to the guitar player on the side of the stage of 9 Inch Nails, and I was like, man, you guys got to play after this. He goes, boy, that was fucking stupid. Like, yeah, the audience is wrung out.
Yeah,
they're done, you know, and now you got to go play.
And the thing is too, you know, 9 Inch Nails are really fucking good live. It's a great show, you know. So, but yeah, there's certain bands you just don't play after, and I agree, you know, and I would not want to play after Kiss either.
No chance, no chance. You know, you let people. I mean, put your ego aside.
Yeah.
I don't care about headlining. I'll happily play before anybody, and there's certain people I will not play after. Absolutely not. I just have too much respect for what they do. You know, Alice to me is like God.
Yeah. He's on the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll.
You know, what can I possibly add to that? You know, his show. Like, nah, I'm not going to do it. I wouldn't do it. You know.
One of my favorite bands of all time is Faith No More, hands down. Like they're just, to me, they're the perfect blend of everything. Being in a project with Patton, what is that like? And you know, you mentioned when you said, you know, you guys were shopping for a deal for the first Phantomus album. What is it like to be on stage with him as your singer?
Well, he's an eccentric freak. I would say that he's arguably one of the most eccentric people I've ever been around. And that's coming from me.
Yeah.
So I would say he is about 1,000 times weirder than his fans would ever hope to understand. That's what I would say. The people that made him, million selling artist are not the avant-garde weird rock people.
Right.
Those people, in order to sell 1 million records or however many they sold, you'd have to be, you have to appeal to a audience that has no idea what the avant-garde is.
Right.
And he is far, far beyond that. Difficult to deal with in a lot of ways. But he's been at this since he was about 18, I think, or maybe 19 when Faith No More got big. And so he didn't have much of a growing period. He kind of got his head chopped off by the MTV generation. And I think if his audience had any inkling of what he was really like, they would be very, very surprised.
Really, eh?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
He's said publicly that you have more talent in your finger, musical talent in your finger, than most people have in their entire body. How do you respond to a comment like that?
That's very nice of Mike. Thank you, Mike. Yeah.
But what I do love about all of those records, and and Patton, and of course, I mean, to me, he's a branch off of your tree. I mean, you guys, it makes sense that you would all make records together, because you guys are all very, very much on the cutting edge of what's going on musically. And that's what I've always liked. It's always what's attracted me. I like people that go out there and take a chance. And I think, the bands that we've talked about Kiss, we've talked about Alice Cooper. Yeah, they became mainstream household names, but they did it by going out and taking a chance in their time to do something very different than anybody else was doing.
Yeah.
When you see a band like Kiss and a band like Alice Cooper get that respect, and then what comes after that, the popularity and the payout for them, you got to be happy for them, because they did do it on their own terms. They never bowed out to anyone.
No, you couldn't pencil that out and say, well, here's what's going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not in the cards for that. Not at all. I mean, Frank Zappa signed Alice Cooper, and he goes, I don't get it, but that's why I'm going to sign you guys.
Right.
But he knew something was there, and there was. I mean, they're Phoenix via Detroit to LA. And I think Alice lives back in Phoenix now. I mean, to me, Alice is just like, oh my God, there's like 5 albums in there that are, to me, just the greatest, some of the greatest shit ever.
Yeah.
Heartfelt, evil, and uplifting at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes, we were driving a stake through the heart of the peace and love generation. I believe that. I think bands Who did the same thing. I mean, they were like, you watch a Who at Woodstock, they're not hippies.
No.
And they're a force to be reckoned with. And that's the kind of thing I want from my own music, and from when I'm a fan of, music that an artist that I can learn something from, that clearly knows something I don't know.
You guys have really become that band for a lot of bands. A lot of people always cite you as an influence, and you guys are ferocious live as well. And now, after speaking with you, I can understand where you get that energy from, and I love the stuff of like the respect of not wanting to go on after somebody.
Oh God, there's no fucking way.
41 years you've been at this. You have kind of become an elder statesman for a lot of people. What do you try to do when people come up to you and ask you how to do this, or for advice? And it's a cliche question, but it happens. And you do have people that will ask you, when you've been doing this as long as you've been doing it, people are going to come and ask you for advice. What do you try to do? What's your go-to, or does it all depend on who you're talking to?
I always say be as peculiar as possible.
Really, eh?
Hideous mediocrity. The world is filled with that already. I mean, doesn't mean you have to make a mess, but just be peculiar. You might have to walk through the fire for a while, but if you're good, it's not going to matter.
Well, that's it. if you just stick to your guns, and I think just doing what feels right a lot of the time is what you should be doing, and especially musically. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that luxury, or just are too scared.
They're trying to join in on something that already exists. It's like, I'm going to be a death metal band. It's like, well, what? Why would you want to join into something else? Great, death metal band. Great. I mean, that's not what Venom were doing.
Yeah. No,
you know,
not at all.
Right. They weren't joining something that already existed. They were doing it. They were forging ahead in a way that was weird, and that hadn't quite ever been done before. Very melodic and very, and super, super influential and strange. But it's just like, I want to be we want to be we want to be a punk rock band. It was like, oh yeah, that's what we are, in the greatest sense of the word. That's what we are first and foremost. And I can't get that out of me. I'm not an arena rock guy. I'm just not. I would go to those shows when I was a kid, but what spoke to me was the intimate nature of punk rock. And that's what we are. And people that can't see that, you're not using your eyes, and you're certainly not using your ears.
Yeah.
We have far more in common with punk rock bands than we ever do with normal metal bands. I like a lot of that stuff too, but by and large, most of it, I just think it just sounds like Helmet. Most of the new stuff.
Love it.
All metal bands, I just listen to them and go, you guys just sound like Helmet.
Yeah, everything sounds like Helmet or Quicksand. I know.
That's what I think. And I've always joked with Paige Hamilton. I go, you can have all the new metal bands, and I'll take Soundgarden and Nirvana. He's like, fuck you.
Buzz, I really, really appreciate you taking the time, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. The new album comes out April 19th called Tarantula Heart. Keep kicking ass, man, and just keep being you. The world needs you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate it. And take it easy. We'll see you soon.
You too, man. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Considering you're a guy who's been in recovery for like 30 years or something,
yeah,
that's the type of buzz you want.
Very, very well played. Yes, I agree. That is the kind of buzz that I want. And just an absolute pleasure to be able to talk to Buzz. Just such a rad dude. And when he gave me the little tidbits about Mike Patton, I thought that was fucking phenomenal. It was really special. But Ryan, we said we had a bonus, and we have a bonus guest that we're adding to this episode. And I'm very, very, very pleased to say that we are joined by one of the gentlemen who co-founded Ipecac Records with Mike Patton. This guy is so influential in so many ways on so much music. And just the fact that he agreed to do this is really, really cool. So I'm excited that we're adding to this episode, Ryan, Greg Werckman of Ipecac Records, the founder of Ipecac. And Ryan, this conversation is so good.
So good.
If you are a fan of music, if you're a fan of Mike Patton, if you're a fan of how to get something off the ground, people with life experiences, going out on a limb and trying to make something happen. Greg has done exactly that, going against the grain, starting a label in 1999 when the music business was about to shit the bed, and then keeping it successful in the hardest years the music business has ever faced, and coming out on top and lasting for 25 years. Well, this guy's got all the answers to that, and he'll tell you his journey. So here he is, Greg, co-founder of Ipecac Records. All right, really, really happy to have with me today on the podcast. I've been a fan of this label for a long, long time. Obviously, being a lifelong fan of Faith No More. When Mike Patton decides to start a record label, my ears perk up, and they have been perked up for quite some time now. And I'm happy to have the other side of the Ipecac coin. Greg Werckman is joining us, co-founder of Ipecac Records. Thanks for taking the time to chat today. It's a monumentous year for you because you've been in business for, it's 25, right?
25. That's what they say. Yeah.
Did you ever think that you would have a label for 25 years, or was this just that you nod your head?
Not at all. We didn't even really think it was going to be a real label. Mike was on the road with Faith No More, and his last two tours before they took a hiatus, he was making recordings in his hotel rooms. And created a couple projects and just was like, hey, I would like to find a place to put these out. And so I said, as his manager, I was like, yeah, let's find a home for him. And then I heard them and I was like, oh my God, this is not your standard rock and roll, I guess you would say. So anyway, I didn't expect it to be, but they were even stranger than what I thought. The first thing we had to do, though, Mike was under contract with Warner Brothers.
Right.
So before we did anything, I had to fly down to Los Angeles and play these for the president of Warner Brothers to get his permission. Needless to say, that meeting lasted, well, the music part of that meeting lasted about 15 seconds. And he was like, wow, I don't even know what this is, but good luck.
You've been released.
Yes, you're free to go.
What was this the adult themes in voice stuff, or was that?
No, this was Maldoror, which
Okay.
is the project he did with Merzbow,
Oh, yeah.
Japanese noise guy, and the first Phantomas record,
Okay.
which at that point was just a demo. He was playing all the instruments on the Phantomas demo before he mailed it to the other guys.
So, when you look back on that, and I mean, this is a classic story from, for anyone who's had any success, there's so many people that shut doors before one opened. What's really unique about this story is that you guys opened your own door. It's like no one wanted to open the door, so you guys kind of built your own door frame, built the hinge and everything, and then opened the door. Now, when you look back on this, there's got to be that kind of like almost like that kid that got bullied in high school moment when you realize, you know what, I ended up being one of the cool kids and you guys were all wrong. You guys kind of peaked in high school. Is there ever that feeling where we were kind of right and we stuck to our guns?
No,
No.
we still don't feel like cool kids. To be honest, we still can't believe it. And it's, if I say that to someone, they don't think I'm telling the truth. But Mike and I talk about it. We look at our discography now and we're like, oh my God, we really put out all these records and we're part of this. As a matter of fact, the first Phantomas record, we said to each other, if we can find 10,000 weirdos in the world that would buy this record, we will take our clothes off and do cartwheels down Market Street in San Francisco. That's how we were sure we wouldn't find many people to go on this adventure with us.
Yeah.
And about a month before the record came out, our distributor called and said, hey, our pre-orders are a little over 30,000. And I was like, wait, what?
Wow.
And he goes, and that's now, it may only there may only be more. We strapped on and said, okay, let's go for the ride.
That's got to be a great feeling though, when you're working with someone who you're close to, who you appreciate and who you respect musically, and you guys do stick to your guns and say, we're going to make this work. And then it's got to be a great feeling. That has to be, I know there's a lot of ups and downs in 25 years of putting out records, but that's got to be a great jumping off point.
The greatest feeling is when you find in life, when you find your people.
Yeah.
And when we put this, the first Phantomas record out, and we're validated by, yes, there are other people that are open-minded about music, and they're not content just to listen to what's on the radio or played on MTV every, hour. So yeah, that was a great feeling.
We haven't released it yet, but I had Buzz on a couple of weeks ago and we were talking a little bit about,
Cool.
He's got, you guys are very involved with Melvins at this point. You've picked up so much of the discography and been putting those records out for so long. He seems to be somebody that needs to be in a place where he's not questioned about his creativity. It's just like, we're going to support you. You just put out what you want to put out and just go for it.
I'll just say this. Honestly, it was the Melvins that made Ipecac, because until at first it was just going to be an outlet for Mike to put out his various projects. Once we started putting it together and Phantomas came to be, and Buzz was part of Phantomas, Buzz was like, the Melvins, we don't really have a home.
Yeah.
And once we added them to the mix, it's a record label.
And it's nice because, you can tell in our conversation that he's very respectful of of where you guys are at and the relationship you guys have. But then when he talked about his previous records that he had, he goes, they've taken really good care of those releases, so there's no need for me to go after them. Like, I'm going to leave them there. And I like that. It's just, it kind of is the way it should be. But unfortunately, anyone that's worked in the music industry, myself included, it's not always that's not always the story. Sometimes there's bitter battles. There's the sycophants that just go after hungry artists that will give up anything to just have that dream. And it's gross.
It really is. I'll go a step further. Buzz, I spend a lot of time with Buzz. He's one of my best friends in the world. And people act like they must think, oh, he must have hated being on a major label and he must regret that.
Yeah.
And Buzz, no, he doesn't. And that's one of the things I love about Buzz. It's about the music. It's about the art. Record labels are way overrated. There are horrible independent record labels. There are horrible majors, but there are good people at major labels and there are good people at independent. It's just about the music. No one really cares that much about the record label, to be completely honest. And that's what we wanted when we decided to create, that it was going to become a real label. Let's get out of the way and let's let the art do the talking. I remember being begged and pleaded with to make T-shirts that said Ipecac.
Yeah.
And I really didn't want to, because it was against really what we, Sub Pop had a brand.
Yeah.
Lots of good record labels have brands. We purposely didn't want to be a brand. We just wanted to be an outlet for good music, good art.
But now everybody wants an Ipecac t-shirt, myself.
Yeah. Well, not everybody, but yeah. And we do listen to our fans too. We try to.
For sure.
So.
But what's great is the what you're saying of getting out of the way of the artist and letting them do the talking, and I think there's a couple labels you mentioned, they're the ones that really did exactly that. They just said, let's let the music, and they're the ones that end up being the cool label. So it's almost like, if you want to keep it, you got to give it away, and that's how you get that status. And it's almost like the people that try to do it the other way are the ones that fail. I think it really always has to be about the music. And when you let an artist be an artist, that's where their true, greatness shines. There's so many cool things that you guys have put out. Obviously, a lot of the focus is on patent stuff and on the Melvins, but what's been the release that's come out that you've championed for, that maybe you had a bit of resistance from other people or people saying, like, this is crazy? I mean, that's kind of a weird question to ask you, because you guys are kind of the label that will put out stuff that necessarily might not be liked by everybody. But what's been that you've brought to the table, that you've championed, that you might have had a bit of resistance on, that you were happy to get across the finish line?
Wow. That is a tough question. In the old days, you could develop bands. These days, it is really hard to develop a band. A band has to develop themselves. They have to tour.
Sure.
To find an audience, really. So I guess it's those times where we've worked with a band and they started out one thing and they became something a lot bigger and better. And big isn't always better. But the band, the one band that comes to mind is ISIS. They had a good following. They were a little like cult, little underground, and each of their records, their audience expanded and expanded. And that's really, satisfying to be like, we were there for that ride. And they're such great people. At the end of the day, I say this and it sounds really cheesy, like a Hallmark card or something, but every 6 months I get to write royalty checks.
Yeah.
And it's great. I love being able to send bands money. Now, look, at the end of the day, sometimes those checks might be $100, but it feels good.
Yeah.
And it's just good to have an artist get rewarded for what they do.
100%.
And that's how our label is set up. We don't give bands $100,000 advances or $200,000, because at that point it is a business. So at that point, the band is down here because they're in a hole financially. So to prove themselves, they have to get out of this hole, and they're trying to prove themselves and make and find the love from the record label. We have had records that have sold 1,500 copies that have made a profit. So yeah, it's just a more comfortable way. And I think it lets the art breathe. if you're not under this, oh my God, how are we going to make back this $500,000 advance? We're going to be deemed a failure unless we do, in the business sense. And that can bleed over to the art.
It's funny, you know, the year that you guys started, like that 99, 2000 was smack in the middle of Napster and LimeWire and all that stuff hitting. Because I remember putting out a record, being on a label and putting out our first album October 3rd, 2000, and kids coming to our shows with burned CDRs going, can you sign my record? I'm like, what is this? They're like, well, it's your album. I just burned it off the internet. And I remember there were bands that were, you know, there were people that were railing against that for the artist, just saying like, you know, and Lars Ulrich being one of them, like everyone made him a villain. Everyone made him a villain. And I remember thinking to myself, man, Lars was right. And
he was.
But at the same time, you know, and this is just me as someone, as an outsider talking, you may be able to shed light on this, but I really believe the streaming services on the movie and TV side had a better business model and benefited from that. If music would have just, you know, if you would have told people back then, hey, you know, for $15.99 or $9.99 a month, you'll get all the music you want. And if we would have adapted that mentality like everyone does to Netflix now, people wouldn't have even thought. They would have been like, sure, be here, take my money. But it's almost like the music business took so long to catch up to that. And now we're in this weird holding pattern.
Yeah. No, I agree. The big labels were in denial.
Yeah. Big time.
And the big artists were too. To this day, it bothers me how much crap Lars got and Metallica got. They were standing up for the artists. They were saying, we create art. Now, look, the optics might have been not so great because they were millionaires.
Yeah.
But what he was saying and what they were stood for, it was amazing how few artists rallied behind Metallica for saying that.
Oh, I remember.
What can you do? I mean,
so you mentioned you were managing Mike before this label started. Where did you get your start in music? Like, how did it start for you? Did it start as a band manager? Were you a musician yourself?
I worked at a talent agency in New York, and my part of the agency was to work with all the weirdos. So this agency represented people for spoken word engagements, commercials, things like that. So I was out of college and I went to this agency and they were like, okay, here's someone young, maybe a little odd as a person. I've always been maybe a little odd. And let's give him all the weirdos, the troublemakers. So I worked with and traveled with and managed like Hunter Thompson, Timothy Leary, Abby Hoffman, all these rebel rousers and avant-garde counterculture people. And one of the people was Jello Biafra, the former lead singer of the Dead Kennedys.
Of course. I
became really good friends with Jello. And at some point, I was always into music since I was a kid. I was a radio disc jockey. I was always had music around me. And at one point, Jello said, would you ever consider moving to San Francisco? I have a record label and it's kind of struggling. And I would love to get a fresh, someone out there with a bit of a business mind that loves music to get it back on track. And originally I told him no. And then at one point, I don't remember why or when, but I just got fed up with living in New York. So I called Jello and said, you know what, why don't I come out for like 6-8 months or something and do that? I've never been to California. Sounds fun. And I did that in 1989, November of 1989. And I stayed there and ran his label for, I don't know how long, 6 years maybe. And then got a job offer at a major label, Mercury Records, and did that for the longest 10 months of my life. And then, and at that point, I was also managing Mike and realized I can do this. You know, I've got the background of doing it with an indie punk rock label. I've seen how major labels operate. There's got to be a middle ground in there from a business aspect.
100%. And there, here you are 25 years later doing it. And
yeah.
When you look at the future of this label, are you guys always ear to the ground, or is it, do you find you have a lot of stuff that just comes to you now because people want to be associated with Ipecac?
Yeah, the best part is we have bands, and our bands are like-minded, and then that goes into who we decide to put out with. So
Sure.
our bands come back from a tour and they'll be like, oh my God, in Yugoslavia, we saw the most amazing band. So our bands are really our A&R people. And so, yeah, just our friends in the music business, yeah, bring things to us, or people have side projects. Henry Rollins was the one that brought the Bobby Lees, a band we put out their record last year. Rollins sent an email and says, "Oh my God, I just saw the most mind-blowing old school, straight up punk rock band. You got to see this band." And he put us in touch with them, so we started talking to him. And so, yeah, it's just keeping your ears open and finding your people. The people find each other.
Well, yeah, and someone like Rollins, I mean, I don't know anyone who has there's two people that I know that have a passion for music at that level, him and the singer from Refused, Dennis.
Yeah.
Two incredibly,
Who we almost worked with.
Oh, really? Well, listen, don't worry. He's got 1,000 projects, so you'll probably get one.
We have heard all of them. The one we wanted to do was Refused, though, and we made an offer, and they ended up choosing someone else. But yeah, Rollins for me, Rollins and Jello are the two people that music is. Yeah, it's more important than food and air.
Yeah.
Both of them, their record collections are just like mind-blowing. And both of them are also music savants. They can tell you things about the most obscure cassette tapes and things. They're fascinating. They're awesome. They are rock.
They're like living discogs.
They are.
You're re-releasing some of the back catalog, starting off with the Phantomas records, repressing. Is that when you guys do stuff like that, is there any part of you that worries that you might be kind of taking away from the stuff that you originally put out, or do you look at it as a way to give the people that weren't there at the jumping off point a chance to get it?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's more of the latter. We just keep finding, much to our surprise, that young people, that weren't even born discover, Phantomas or ISIS and stuff. And these records just keep selling. And then the whole vinyl thing is just mind blowing,
It's crazy when
it is.
It's I was talking to John Garcia from Caius.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about Frank Kozik and Man's Ruin and him passing, and just the, Kozik deciding to put records out on vinyl when nobody was buying vinyl. Like nobody was buying vinyl. Everyone was buying CDs. And then here's this guy I'm going to bring back old school silkscreen show posters, and I'm going to put out exclusive vinyl. And now, if you have some of those things, I mean, they're worth. Yeah. I mean, as a collector, as you can tell, I collect shit.
Yeah.
Having some of that original Man's Ruin stuff is just mind blowing. For you, is there any part of you that's a collector, and do you keep one of everything that you guys put out? Like, do you have your own little vault?
No. Yeah, that's odd. I'm a collector not of music, though, which is odd. You would think I would be. I had an amazing vinyl collection and I sold it. I'll be the first to admit it, maybe 15 years ago. And I regret it now. I just didn't like moving it, and I liked having music easier and accessible. And I had a child, and at a certain point, the time involved of just sitting down and, hanging with my turntable, it changed. Ironically, about 5 years ago, my child started getting into vinyl, and she got me back in it. And now I wouldn't say I'm collecting, but I restarted a vinyl collection. I used to collect video games, was my main passion, and action figures. I had a fair amount of, all the nerd stuff.
What are you collecting now? Like what's something that you're really into?
I don't know. Hockey jerseys, maybe.
Really? You're a hockey fan?
Oh, yeah. So I was a season ticket holder. Well, when I lived in New York, I was a season ticket holder for the Rangers. But and my dad used to take me to minor league hockey in Dayton, Ohio. They were called the Dayton Gems. But then I moved to California, and so I was a season ticket holder with the San Jose Sharks for, I want to say, 16 years.
Okay.
And then a few years, no, maybe more than that, actually. Anyway, a few years ago, I moved to Columbus, Ohio. And before I even bought a house, a place to live, I bought season tickets for the Blue Jackets. So yeah, no, hockey, tonight's our last game of the season, and it's heartbreaking every year.
Well, listen, I do some work with them. I'm from Montreal. I live in Montreal, so I do some work.
Oh,
I do work with the Canadians. The Canadians have a new mascot called Metal, and
oh,
so he's Youppi's brother. He's a heavy metal mascot that was Youppi's
oh,
brother.
cool. I
So
didn't know that.
Yeah, so I work with him. I put on a wig and sunglasses, and
Really?
I call myself Roadie.
Well, one of my favorite hockey players of all time, who I was fortunate enough to get to know, is Martin St. Louis, who's,
Okay. Yeah.
the head coach of Montreal. So I always root for him.
Yeah, I mean, the Canadians, we have the most cups. We're
Yeah.
always going to have the most cups. No one will ever be able to catch up to us. I mean, it just
Yeah.
won't happen. But it's funny how there's music guys that are really into hockey. Talking to the owner of Brian over at Metal Blade too. He's just a massive
He's
hockey.
huge. And yeah, Al from Ministry is
Yeah.
huge into hockey. I've gone to games with him. I've gone to games with Buzz. Yeah, there's a lot of hockey people.
So you say you collect jerseys. Do you like, are you the kind of guy that frames and displays them, or are they more like on hangers at this point?
All hangers. I have a locker room, which I call it, that has these racks down in my basement.
Okay.
It's a weird thing to collect because yes, like art, when you collect, you show people.
Yeah.
People don't really see my jersey collection, but I love it still.
Do you have one that's on display like anywhere in your house?
Nope,
Really? Okay.
not one. The one I would, one of my best friends is a former hockey player named Dan Boyle, and he played on the Canadian, won a gold medal with Team Canada, and I have one of his Team Canada jerseys. That's the one, Olympic jerseys. That's the one I should frame.
Well, it's crazy because the only hockey memorabilia I have is a Guy Lafleur signed photo to me.
Whoa.
And I got that right. I think he was doing a signing at my friend's framing place, one of those private signings where people will mail in their stuff. And at the time I was working at I was a radio host, and he signed it like Rock On to
that's awesome.
Yeah, so something like that. And I'm not the biggest hockey fan, but my brother is a massive Habs fan. So when I started doing stuff with the Canadians, every time I would get like a practice puck off the ice, I would send it to him, and I would send stuff. So, but collecting is passion, and passion is what drives almost any business. Somebody's got to be passionate about it. The passion that you guys have for new music and for bringing that to people, it shines through in the label. So I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to chat. And congratulations on 25 years. I hope there's 25 more.
I hope not. There's no way I'm doing this for 25 more years.
And lastly, the chance to work with a guy like Mike. I asked Buzz this question, what's it like to work with Mike? And he told me, he gave me an answer, and I want to hear it. Yeah. And I'll share it with you after, but I want to ask you first, what is it like to work with Mike?
I have worked with some of the strangest people, I think, in the world, and the most creative people in the world. I managed and traveled around with Hunter Thompson. I ran Jello Biafra's record label and managed him for a while. Mike, he's just, I think the weird thing about Mike is people expect him to be something, like to have a presence. He doesn't. He's a real regular guy. Yeah. But I wish I knew what inside his head, what he hears and what he thinks, because his mind is something else. He's very, very creative, obviously, and just strives to be unique. Maybe it really comes natural for him. Everything comes natural for him. That's the thing that I think pisses off some music people. They expect that he is a trained vocalist. He's never taken any training, in his life, and he will sit down and have a huge steak and then go out on stage and do what he does. He doesn't do vocal exercises. It just comes out. So he's a really good dude. The thing about Mike that's different than a lot of the people I work with, he hates fame.
Yeah.
Like doing an interview for him or posing for a picture is really, really hard.
Yeah.
He doesn't like talking about himself. He doesn't like seeing pictures of himself. So the whole autograph thing, fans have had interactions, and the interactions are great, but sometimes they're not. And when I'm with him and I see why, it's just like, he's like, really? And he has said it many times. He's like, someone gets a thrill out of seeing my signature, me writing my name down. He doesn't understand that. And he doesn't understand fame. And he doesn't care how many records he sells. He doesn't know how many records he sells. Yeah. So he's pretty unique in that regard.
He's truly about the art and just about the work.
Beyond. Yes, absolutely.
So Buzz said, he goes,
Buzz does not understand Mike.
Buzz said, he goes, as weird as you think Mike Patton is, he goes, he's that much weirder.
Yes. Yeah. I don't use the word weird, but yes, unique. Yeah.
Unique. Well, I like that better because I think that everybody has their place, and obviously he's forged out his place. Thank you for taking the time to chat today.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on this milestone, and keep going to see hockey games and keep being passionate, because it truly does drive this very unique label that a lot of people are fans of, and I wish it nothing but success in the future.
Thanks a lot.
Well, it's really cool to add some bonus content on, because you love physical media, I love physical media, and nothing like makes my mouth water more, not just a good transfer, but a special feature.
Mm-hmm.
A bonus feature. Like, this is why you're not just streaming it. Look at all this extra stuff they give. And I like to feel that we do that on the Rockman Power Hour too. So there's no Blu-ray of this episode, but if there was, you'd be losing your mind.
This would be the bonus feature. And this is the behind the scenes. This is literally a behind the scenes chat that we had. This is the director's commentary. I mean, Greg, I really like, after talking to that guy, I could have talked to him for hours and hours and hours. He was just wonderful.
I wish you would have. It was really going good.
It was great. So hopefully we get to have him on the show again. And man, thank you to everyone that helped us get these guests this week. It was just so much fun. And I got to give a big shout out to Monica at Speakeasy PR, who was nice enough to get us in touch with Mr. Osborne, and then got us in touch with Greg as well. So thank you to Monica and to everyone over at Speakeasy PR. Ryan, thanks for doing this with me, man. This has been a really, really good episode, and we're looking forward to next week. We've got another great one lined up for you, and a lot of great stuff coming this entire summer. So make sure you keep it locked on the Rockman Power Hour, wherever you are listening to us audio wise. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Thanks again to our friends at Heartbeat Hot Sauce, the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. And if you use our promo code Rockman20, you'll get 20% off your entire order. Thank you to Studio House Designs for making us look awesome. Thank you to our friends at Audio Technica Canada. Thank you to my co-host Ryan Stick, our producer Julia Kajerski, and to all of you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, we'll see you on the Rockman Power Hour. Hey, thanks so much for watching the podcast. We really appreciate your support. And if you're enjoying the podcast, click this link right over here to watch the next episode, and click right over here and subscribe. And that way you won't miss anything.